What's up, nerds? Let's do another episode of Vapor Build. So, let's say you want to start a new life. Maybe you're European, tired of facing religious or classist persecution, or maybe you're just hoping to enact your own a few years down the road. If it's the 1600s, boy, have I got the product for you. A sailing ship. Simply by letting the wind push some bed sheets around, you and 100 or more of your totally random acquaintances with home building and homesteading skills can find a place that's already inhabited and just pretend it's not in as little as 2 months. Step 1, get everyone in the boat. Step 2, cross the ocean. Be sure not to sink. There are no refunds if you do. Step 3, find a bay, or maybe a bay. Or if you're really fancy, maybe a harbor. If you only have a bay, I'm sorry, just go home now, loser. You're not gonna make it. But if you have a harbor, the next step is to build your town. So how do you build a town? Well, you start with a fort probably. A really big one. No wait, did I say big? I meant small. I forgot we actually have to build it ourselves. Okay, now let's build houses. Maybe down a street. That sounds better than, I don't know, whatever other option there is. How wide should we make the street? Since there are no sidewalks or curbs or sewers or utility right-of-ways, there's not going to be any cars driving on it, stoplights aren't a thing yet, streetlights aren't a thing yet, trees and tree planters in your streets aren't a thing, none of that stuff. I'm just going to spitball here. 30 feet of dirt, door to door, between me and my neighbor across the way. That feels decent for now. Anyways, since this is a European getup, we've got some handy little governing system for assigning land to families via a grid. Ours are 50 feet deep by, I don't know, 8 times the size of your family wide. So if you've got 130 people on your boat and they say there are 20 families, your average family size is 6 or 7, and it's about 50-ish feet. So we're just going to make our squares on this map 5 by 5 squares roughly and call it good enough. This is TownScaper. As you can see, it's not like it's going to work out anyways. Since you've got a family of 6 or 7, you're going to want a nice big house. I'm talking like maybe 300 square feet, or if you're really fancy, like maybe 400 square feet. Let's be honest, you're not wasting space on bathrooms or kitchens, so you're really getting a nicely sized bedroom for the family. That's all you would better want because it's all you're going to get for decades. Anyways, a small note here is that these dimensions on some of the houses that are going to go up are going to be a little bit off. Who would have thought with this grid system? I'm trying to assume that each of these squares is 10 feet, give or take. So really they would be like 15 feet by 15 feet or 15 by 20 or 15 by something about that instead of the 10 by 30 most of these structures are going to end up being. Right now I'm just laying out the framework here, which as you can see, in order to go a straight shot is just going swimmingly. We've got a nice straight road. We have lots that make any sense at all, and I definitely won't get lost halfway through this video, and you won't be able to just see me totally building something because I'm confused and lost. Yeah, speaking of being lost, what was I talking about? Okay, anyways, I'm filling in some of the structures here now, and like I said, they're kind of like this 10-foot by 30-foot section, which really isn't what the houses look like at a Plymouth Rock, if you haven't figured out by now. Really, the key thing is that you want your houses to go down your nice central street because you don't have enough houses for 2 streets yet. I mean, you kind of do, because as you've seen, this is the first half of our houses. So we've already got kind of a single crossroad. They built the colony in a bit of a diamond shape and then stuck a big wooden fence around it with a fort at the one end. I'm gonna be totally honest. I finished putting this together to some degree in TownScaper because I, wanted to give the tool a try, but it doesn't work that well for these either realistic builds, especially European and in the Americas, because we love our grid system, and this grid system is just so wonky and it makes it so much fun to build in, but it does not make it good for educating in. So what I wound up doing is just going into SketchUp. I'm sure you can look in the comments or the summary below and find the timestamp for that. Yeah, the buildings, the layout here is fun, but definitely not indicative of what Plymouth Colony would have really looked like. Although I do end up finishing the layout in SketchUp, so you can kind of bounce between the two if you want and take a peek at just how differently these shapes actually wind up when you just kind of do what the original colonists did, or settlers or pilgrims, whatever you want to call them, and you just slap a straight road down that leads directly to your fort, and then you build some houses, and then you make like a nice little wall to try and defend all your stuff. It winds up looking just a smidge different than whatever I built here. So I think, let's see, checking back in on where I am with the townhouse, or rather with the TownScaper build, I'm just trying to make a straight road that goes out, and this is, I think, about the time I discovered that is the edge of the map. Apparently, people were not kidding when they said that the build size is a little bit smaller than they would have hoped. The developer said that, he built the biggest village or town that he could think of and then doubled it. If these are indicative of 10 square feet each, you got maybe 1,000 square feet end to end, which is 2 or 3 city blocks on average in your average American city, at least. So totally just a bit smaller than a city, but I guess that's why it's called Townscape, is because you're probably building at most something like this little this little village here. So anyways, this is me trying to this is the part I build this road thinking that it was the original. Now we've basically got I don't even think I could fit 20 houses. Originally, if you've got 20 families and 130 people, which is roughly what Plymouth Colony had, you wind up with those lot sizes that I mentioned earlier, but I couldn't even fit them on the map in the layout that they originally had them. But right now what I'm about to do is slap in as many houses as I kind of can fit, and just I don't even bother to fill in the land or the water for those lots, because it's just you can see the grid is just all over the place. But what I'm building in a few seconds here, these larger structures that are the common house, which is where folks would hang out if their house burned down, because that was a fairly common problem. You'd probably lose 1 or 2 houses a year and build 6 or 7 a year, just because you're not building with brick like you are in TownScaper. You're building with wood and thatch, and you're using fire for heat, so it doesn't work out. Now I actually just kind of got sick of it and just decided, forget it, I'm gonna build this whole thing all over again in SketchUp. And so I definitely don't have the best workflow, because my goal was to make this a little bit more interesting to watch than strictly starting from the flat work and moving up from that, which is what you would really want to do if you were trying to build a not so quick and dirty model. Is you want to finish all of the horizontal work before, so that you can clean up the lines really easily and then pull things up vertically. But I think for the time being here, my goal was just to get some interesting stuff to look at, and then get struggling with the tools. I consistently have this problem in this video. You'll see the rectangle tool on the SketchUp Online, which is just the free program that I've transitioned to since I'm not really doing any work with this anymore. It just like consistently swaps the rectangle tool to be from the center, like pulling it from the center, which isn't bad. I just haven't figured out what button I keep accidentally clicking that does that. So if someone knows it, please comment, because I am sick of accidentally pulling that button and just having to swap tools to come back to it to figure out how to clear that. But like I said, these are more indicative of the actual shapes these, Plymouth homes would have really taken. Once again, I think they really only built, I think I read somewhere, I should have actually taken down the notes. Feel free to just Google Plymouth Colony and do some stuff, or I can dig it up if you guys are really interested. But they built around 6 or 7 on average, and they would have them burned down rather frequently, which is partially why for the first, I think, 2 years, the majority of the colonists actually just lived on the ship itself, the Mayflower. They just stayed there because, their houses weren't finished. So what I'm doing here is now sticking that common house and shed area back in, because let's be honest, you gotta have a nice, you gotta have a place for people to sleep when their house burns down and the boat's gone, but you also need that storehouse so that your kids have somewhere to go listen to their, I don't know, viola rave music. I don't know what would have been popular. You gotta have a warehouse for them to go party in anyways. So right now I'm using the offset tool and pulling up the fences, and you'll notice that it definitely pulls a fence up around the house. Once again, this is because I didn't do the flat work correctly, because I'm just trying to get stuff vertical so that you guys have something interesting to look at. Normally SketchUp takes a lot longer for me to do because I do it a little bit cleaner, but the whole goal here is just the fact that, man, that TownScaper build is not interesting to look at because we didn't go vertical enough, and that's going to be the problem with most of these starting structures. Is just, when you're first starting out a whole world or a whole new, European settlement network of cities, none of them are going to be that tall and not terribly dense either, which means building them in TownScaper isn't going to look cool, and also the grid is just so wonky you wind up with whatever I had. You can see this is much, much more what the actual layout of Plymouth Colony was. So what I'm doing here is going in and sticking in this traditional, like I said, it's just a single wide road that leads directly to the fort for all of the villagers, all of the settlers, pilgrims, colonists. Comment like 5 more names for them below, please, so that I can just keep making up names for these people. Supposedly they had fences. I put these in just for fun because all of the recreation and like the historic village that's actually there somewhere nearby has them. I'm not totally convinced personally that they would have made that a priority right off the bat, but supposedly there's some discussion, and once again, I'm not a historian on Plymouth Rock. I like houses and urban planning in general, so this particular place is not my direct area of expertise, but I guess they started out with more of a communal strategy, and then when they got some lazy people, they swapped to more of a, hey, you grow your own crops and that's what you have to eat. And apparently everyone became more productive, and thus, a lovely little society was born or something, according to some ancient looking web page. And that's probably when they would have actually stuck the fences up when it mattered on your property line, like, hey, that's my corn, not your corn, Tom. But before that, I don't think they would have really focused on these interior fences. they would have definitely raised the exterior walls, which ironically I'm going to do dead last, because they've got this fort, they've got their houses, and I'm guessing they probably would have wanted the fence built first, since they didn't know their neighbors and they were terrified of everything in the New World. So they probably would have laid out the land lots. Each family would have figured out how much land they were going to have and maybe started planning and done some labor on their houses, some labor on the fort and the communal structures, and some labor on the fence itself. So they probably actually would have come together a little bit at the same time, but some places would have taken priority over others. And I'm guessing the fence is a rather important part. So now I've talked my way through all of the actual painting of these structures, which means now it's time to just kind of wrap up and do that exterior fence. And so this is a little sheet I did. The fort was actually a lot further back from a lot of these houses, because they make this really narrow diamond, much more narrow than I would have personally believed until I'd looked at the plan. But I think it's partially to do with just how the lot sizes and the layout. Instead of doing a cross, they did a single street, which means you've got a real narrow diamond in order to actually do this. And so the perimeter fence wound up being about half a mile from what I've read. So that's basically takes this kind of shape, and you'll see I'll clean up these lines a little bit here and use just some of the general inferring tools on SketchUp to really quickly kind of build that layout. I think there was some kind of turret here from what I saw, but I made it way too small. Don't worry about it. And so now I'm just cleaning up some lines and gonna raise up those fences here. I'm doing things a little bit differently. I'm not using the offset tool for a lot of this. I'm actually using I'm just gonna start pulling lines in on the exterior. So once I get those pathways laid down, as you can see here, I'm just gonna start moving things in a single foot, just using, kind of the rough size of like your general timber that they would have had the effort and ability to cut down. Go through here and just raise those walls of 13 feet, something kind of average, so that they would have had protection from attack, which I'm pretty sure they never got attacked. I think they actually, from what I read quickly, they abandoned the fort for real use or defensive use fairly early on. Anyways, I think I gave you a little bit of a view of the whole thing after I finished painting it, but this looks a lot more like the actual Plymouth Colony. So I'm gonna wrap the video up here and just say, if you liked it, subscribe. If you don't, if you didn't like it, that's cool too. I'm just screwing around. So hope you guys enjoyed yourselves, because I actually did. So see you guys, I don't know, in a week or so. Alrighty, take care while I spend the last few seconds just showing you this Plymouth Colony.